All right, so today we're going to continue talking about Egypt and kind of finish them up, talk about some of the achievements. And so the first dynastic group of Egypt was called the Old Kingdom. Now we're going to do the next two, the Middle and New Kingdoms. The Middle Kingdom was relatively short by Egyptian standards, only about 400 years, as you see here. And basically, what happens around 2100 or so, the Old Kingdom collapses. There's the last dynasty falls apart. There's some infighting, kind of like a mini civil war, until finally a pharaoh is able to reestablish control. Now, what's different than the Old Kingdom is they're going to stop building the huge pyramids, but they are going to expand the empire down past the third and fourth cataract. So, as it gets larger, remember the cataract; those are those rapids around in the Nile River. So it's going to expand southerly. They're also going to create something called the Office of the Vizier, which is kind of like a vice president, but a guy that kind of runs things for the pharaoh. The pharaohs aren't necessarily as deeply involved. But what the Middle Kingdom is really known for is having actually the first foreign dynasty. It is around 1640 that a group of people known as the Hyksos come in, and that is the Egyptian name for the Hittites. So you do have the first ever non-Egyptian dynasty that rules, and they'll rule for about 100 years. And the reason why they were able to conquer? Oh, they had iron, the Egyptians didn't. Iron versus bronze, bronze loses. Eventually, they'll push the Hyksos out, but it'll take a little while. So here gives you an idea. So the Old Kingdom, if you look at the map, went to about here. Okay, so the Middle Kingdom going even further south, so you're getting extended control. Here is a statue of a pharaoh and some pottery and some very sophisticated jewelry. Now, here are the Hyksos. So they're going to come in, they're going to conquer a great deal here, control all of the modern day Holy Land, as well as up to a little bit into Turkey and parts of Syria, Lebanon. Really a huge empire. Once again, we've talked about the Hittites. This is what they do. Okay. And this is a Hittite site that is actually being analyzed, if you will, or you have a big archaeological dig today. Now, eventually, the new kingdom is going to be able to be reestablished. Basically, what ends up happening is that the Egyptians are going to be able to get some iron, eventually get organized, rise up, and throw them out. And it is the great pharaoh Amosis, or Amos, right here. You see him destroying everybody. That leads them to victory. Now, the New Kingdom is significant because it was the largest kingdom. This one lasts for about 500 years. They are going to go from Syria all the way down to Nubia. It is expanded the most by Thutmose III, but Ramses II is the one that is referenced in the Bible. He is the longest ruler. He rules for over 70 years, also has over 100 kids, fun fact. And he's really responsible for tremendous amounts of building. Um, and you also had your first ruling queen, that was Queen Hatshepsut. She actually took the title of Pharaoh. She took over when her husband died. Her son, who was actually Thutmose III, was only a little boy, so she took control initially as a regent and then had herself crowned Pharaoh. And banished her son. There was a mini kind of civil war. Much of her tomb was defaced upon her death, but nonetheless, you actually have a woman ruling. Architecture was more sophisticated. Now, it's not bigger than the Old Kingdom, but you're going to see temple and cities like Luxor and Karnak, and I'm going to show you some just wonderful architecture that was built. And they were incredibly wealthy. The Egyptians had wealth like we had never ever seen before. And that is what we actually learned from King Tutankhamun, or King Tut. He only ruled for like a year, but his tomb was full of treasure that we realized how wealthy they were. So here's the size. You see all the way down here to the Kingdom of Kush, which I'll talk about later, and Nubia, all the way up to actually even parts of Turkey. So the largest of the empires that we had ever seen Egypt expand to. Here is Thutmose III. Okay, we see the art getting a little bit better, so fairly accurate for humans. This is Ramses II. That's actually his sigil there, and most of these temples that I'm going to talk about, he built. Here is Queen Hatshepsut. As you can see, she has everything that a pharaoh would have. Obviously, the breasts here indicate that she's female, but what's important is this is a male headdress, and in even some cases, she would be depicted with a beard of a pharaoh, so that really shows what is going on and the power that she had. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in class. One of the biggest temple complexes that was built was the Temple of Luxor, as you see here. That's really important to understand, and that's what Luxor would have looked like. You can see the Egyptians actually like to paint a lot, and you can see just the size of those statues. You see these people here. This was built by Ramses. The Colossi of Memnon, which were just these huge statues that were built at the edge of the empire, just to show how large and how strong the empire was. And here is Abu Simbel. This is just incredible. This is a temple complex that was built into a mountain by Ramses. You can see just how giant the statues were. And you have some smaller ones. So these guys are like, 40 feet on the outside. And this just gives you the scope. This is Lake Nasser over here, and that just gives you an idea of how large this really was. And here's the insides. Here's Ramses beating somebody up. You see all of this was carved out of the rock. There were some caves in here, but even these pillars were brought in and it was carved. And that's one of the great things about the Egyptians. The reason why we have so much of their stuff left is they built it all in stone, and stone lasts. So we have just these really incredible monuments left for us to see. And here's Karnak. This was an entire city that was just built for the gods. So you would come here and worship. Okay, these are all sphinxes, these giant city walls. Here again is the outside of an interior temple. These would have all been pillars, okay, and columns. Okay, more columns, all of these carved. It's just really remarkable. And that's what it would have looked like. You see this huge city with its main temple, these waterways, remarkable for, again, around 3,000 years ago. This is the inside of King Tut's tomb. This is Howard Carter, the American explorer and archaeologist who was able to find it with the aid of Lord Carnarvon from England, as well as with some Egyptian aids as well. And this is just all the stuff. Look at that. That sarcophagus, pure gold. Pure gold statue with all of this decoration. If you put it in price-wise, I mean, easily billions of dollars worth of gold. That's what we learned. It was just incredible. And again here, this is made of onyx and gold, a gold chair, a gold box. It's just remarkable. Now, the Egyptians also give us some incredible achievements. We do think they were some of the earlier discoverers of bronze around 3000 BCE. They were able to transport via boat, but we know they went into the Mediterranean Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Red Sea. Trade everywhere. They exported things like ivory, ebony, leopard skins, gems, gold, slaves, and really wheat. That's their key one that I want you to know. They fed the ancient world, and they imported things like honey, pottery, wine, wood, and makeup was the other big thing. And of course, you see this is their makeup, and they had to wear it because the sun reflected so brightly. Men wore it too, but it wasn't necessarily style, although style was part of it. They did it because if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to see. And you can see the trade routes, so all the way from here in Memphis across the entirety of the Middle East, all the way out to the Persian Gulf and modern-day Iran. And we also do have the writing, which is known as hieroglyphics. They tended to write on stone or papyrus, and they wrote a lot about everyday stuff, so we know how they lived, which you'll see in another video. After 600 BCE, it fades away and they write Greek. Now, the reason why we were able to finally crack the code on writing was the discovery of the Rosetta Stone. Now, the Rosetta Stone had on the top hieroglyphics, in the middle a language we don't really know, and on the bottom, which helped us out, was Greek. And so this guy right here, Jean-Francois Champollion, who was a linguist from France. This was actually, this Rosetta Stone, which I was able to see once for real, was discovered by an expedition by Napoleon. And it took this guy 17 years, but he was able to decipher it. And that's why we finally know so much about the Egyptians. Okay. So we got a lot of great things going on. I want you to make sure you kind of get some questions down, and we'll talk about this stuff in class tomorrow.